Every person, at some point in their lives, will develop a fantasy that can never be fulfilled. A bizarre dream that every now and again crawls up on your mind and pleasantly disrupts your mundane tedium. For most of us, these fantasies can only be fulfilled by using media as a proxy: movies, books, comics, and especially games. For me, that fantasy was being an old school pirate, and being Spider-Man, but that's neither here nor there. You can see where I'm going with this, however, I didn't want to play this game just to gush about how much I love it. My last experience with an Assassin's Creed game was Odyssey, arguably the most polarizing entry to date. Regrettably, I belong in the camp that thinks the franchise is being mishandled, and I concluded that the best way to further solidify my opinion was completing my favorite entry in the series once more. I needed to see for myself. Why do I feel like something is missing in the new installments? Is the older formula really better than the new one? I think I'm ready to give an answer to those questions now that I've completed the game 100 fucking optional objectives. Developed by Ubisoft Montreal, Milan, and Kyiv. Sorry for my pronunciation. Black Flag was released in October of 2013. Can you be 20-year-old and feel like 80? It's considered the most notable hurrah of the series, not because all later games aren't good, but because they aren't as collectively acclaimed. For many people, this is the second best Assassin's Creed game, right next to 2. I'll begin with the story and talk about the side quests and gameplay elements as they become relevant. So, without further ado, please enjoy this extended critique, thoughts. Just make some popcorn, okay? We first see our gallant rogue protagonist, Edward James Kenway, engaged in a fiery naval battle in the year 1750. From his less than esteemed clothing choices, we can tell he's not a captain. We catch a glimpse of a figure donning the traditional assassin garments, standing in the ship pursuing Kenway, and we're thrust into a quick tutorial about ship battles. With the captain distracted by a fire that's spreading around the ship, the assassin seizes the chance to assassinate him, just as he's staring down Kenway, an explosion throws both men overboard. We cut to a scene at an unspecified year, with Edward explaining to his lover his plans.
Is it dangerous? Edward? Privateering, is it dangerous?
Wouldn't pay so nice if it weren't.
Why not sail with the King's Navy, earn a proper wage, sail under gentlemen?
Sod the Navy's gentlemen. For every shilling I'd earn, the captain gets 600. That's no way to earn a fortune.
We don't need a fortune.
It's not about need, Caroline. I want food that don't make me sick. I want walls that hold back the wind. I want a decent life.
How long would you be gone with these privateers?
A year, I reckon. 2 at the most.
All right. No more than 2. Promise me.
He wants to become a privateer, because, as he says, it's more profitable than becoming a sailor in the Navy. This line is really important to his arc as a character. What starts as a good-hearted desire for a good life for him and his lover will soon become an excuse for him to evade reality. But I digress. He promises a leave of 2 years at most, and we cut to the present. where he manages to swim ashore.
We've managed to avoid drowning.
Good job.
Along him, in a war state, crawls the assassin, muttering about getting to Havana. He offers 100 escudos to Edward if he takes him to Havana. Intrigued, Edward approaches him, only to be caught off guard by the assassin.
Bloody fucking pirates!
He runs off to the jungle and Edward gives chase. Even from this interaction we can kinda tell what kind of person Edward is now. He's not so much an American action hero, spitting one-liners left and right, rather he's a man extremely caught up in the moment, not thinking about the consequences of his actions. He didn't die now. Well, it's cause for a hearty laugh. His crew and captain all died and his ship's a wreck. But he's still here and that's all that matters. Throughout the jungle we get a short tutorial on free running, syncing with viewpoints, treasure chests and combat. Kenway kills the assassin and finds a letter on him. He is to deliver an artifact to the governor of Havana, a Templar Grandmaster. Edward doesn't ask any questions about the artifact in question, only seeing the potential for wealth. In the other side of the island, the British have apprehended merchant Stede Bonnet. A small stealth tutorial later, Edward decides to captain Bonnet's ship and take it to Havana. The simulation then ends and we learn of what the present-day story will be. Our character is a new employee working for Abstergo Entertainment, who are somehow accessing Desmond's genes. We're introduced to the other workers there and jump back to the fun. Finally, the title drop culminates what is undoubtedly one of my most fondly remembered opening sequences in any game.
Lively Havana.
Havana at this point in the game and in general functions as a tutorial area, in almost all gameplay features, further teaching you the different things to do and experience in the world. Don't worry, I'll analyze them extensively in a bit. For now, just stay immersed for me, please. Escorting Bonnet in a meeting with other merchants escalates in a scuffle with some thugs, after one recognizes Edward, saying he's one of them pirates, down at Nassau. After we escape from the guards, we meet up with Bonnet, only to find out that his merchandise, as well as the artifact Edward was to give to the governor, has been stolen and taken to a nearby fort. One infiltration sequence later, we're back with only a packet of sugar, and we get this memorable scene.
Sorry about the sugar. I've only one pair of hands.
Oh, it's no great loss. I've got plenty of cargo here to make a profit on my trip.
Will you stay here long?
For a few weeks, yes. Then back to Barbados, to the tedium of domesticity.
Don't settle for tedium. Sail for Nassau. Live life as you see fit.
Haven't I heard that Nassau is crawling with pirates? Seems a very tawdry place.
Not tawdry, liberated.
Oh, God. That would be an adventure. But no, I'm a husband and a father, I have responsibilities. Life can't be all pleasure and distraction, Duncan.
Now yes, it is kind of cheesy that the themes of the story are spelled out quite blatantly here, but it's still a charming scene and certainly carries more weight later on. Our rogue heads to the meeting place with the governor and we're introduced to our three targets, our three main Templars for the game. I mean, it's not explicitly told, but come on, it's obvious we've all played an Assassin's Creed game before. We've got the rejected Fifth Musketeer, Scarface, and your Catholic school's principal. There's also the guard from Oblivion, but no one remembers him. Knowing nothing of their true intentions and blinded by the gold he'll receive, Edward sells the items to the governor and becomes an honorary Templar. His seemingly insignificant actions of handing over a glass vial and a map have enormous ramifications on him and the world. His first mission as a Templar, as a supposed Templar, is to escort a man named Roberts, a so-called sage that can determine the location of the observatory, a mysterious artifact that can spy on anyone around the world. Of course, such an item is pure and simple fantasy. There's no chance that someone in a position of power could use a device to spy on your activities and blackmail on or affect your life, thereby amassing a huge amount of power, making for a pseudo-tyranny on data. Oh, wait a minute! The Templars escort bearded Mark Zuckerberg through the city, but get ambushed by assassin agents, which Edward kills without a second thought. Another action with supposed consequences, but not really this time. For saving one of the most valuable men in the world and the Templar Grand Master of the Caribbean himself, Edward is rewarded... Oh, wow. This game really is more modern than I remember. Reasonably infuriated, Edward decides to find the observatory himself and sell it to make a fortune. To that end, he heads towards the sage's cell to free him.
Sell that to the right person, and I'd be the richest privateer in the West Indies.
Nice save, you almost let it slip out as if your indiscriminate homicide streak in Havana wasn't enough of an indicator. He finds out that Roberts managed to escape and gets immediately arrested. He's sent aboard the treasure fleet heading for Spain. This leads to probably my favorite mission so far, and for a good portion of the game, one of the best, if I may say so myself. Along with his prison mate, Adewale, Edward decides to daringly hijack a ship from the fleet and escape. They first take out the guards below deck and recover their gear before heading to the main deck. The objective of this mission is to free various prisoners around the fleet to serve as crew members on the ship. That entails to jumping from ship to ship and sneaking around an entire fleet in the middle of the storm. The music is tense, and once everyone is freed, the storm catches on, and taking the wheel, Edward mans the newly acquired ship and escapes. This leads to another amazing sequence. Sailing away and escaping from the fleet introduces Edward to the sea perils. Rogue waves and waterspouts impede your progress and must be countered, each in a different way. For waterspouts, sail clear of them because they will pull you closer. For rogue waves, face them head on to come out wet but undamaged. And just listen to the music.
Water spout! Steer clear of that thing!
The crew gets away and they regroup in a nearby island to repair and upgrade the ship. This is where the game truly opens up, and as such, let's slow down the story progression and talk about the gameplay. Black Flag's gameplay is what probably comes to mind when thinking of a classic Assassin's Creed game. Stealth, combat, exploration, some collectibles here and there, and an overall classic adventure. Starting with the combat, it's fairly simple and easy to pick up, doesn't have a very high skill ceiling either. Most enemies have no way to counter or escape your attacks once you've pressed the button a single time, and using pistols or smoke bombs further trivializes them as a threat. However, things get interesting when you're surrounded by 6 or 7 foes at once. Not hard, interesting. Once you down your first enemy, you begin a streak where you'll kill the next enemy in one hit, so on and so forth. In that situation, you start planning your path from enemy to enemy, taking them out in a single finishing move. It's not especially hard, but it is fun to watch the brutal animations play out as you decimate entire ships worth of enemies. Different types of soldiers as foes give some needed variety to the multiple combat encounters. There are the normal guards, wielding a single cutlass. By far the most common enemy type, they're treated as cannon fodder. Following, we have the lookouts. They and their bayonets are your primary concern in stealth encounters. Accompanying them in the rooftops, you can find agile soldiers that attack with a small knife and can block your attacks. You can either counter them or break their defense to stun them. The biggest threat in early combat encounters are these buff guys, the brutes. Their axes deal massive damage and cannot be countered directly. Finally, we have the captain, an enemy wielding both a cutlass and a pistol he can use in combat. A man so chad and alpha, you can only stun him by kicking his nuts in with your 5-ton boots, sending him in a momentary coma that allows you to kill him, or just shoot him twice. Along with the aforementioned pistols, Edward obtains different gadgets to aid him in combat and stealth over the course of the story. Stealth in this game is built around moving from stalking zone to rooftop to reach your target. There is no crouch button, a detail that feels weird to look back on after playing newer installments. Worry not, the game's stealth sections still function decently even without that. Edward can also purchase or craft new equipment that will aid him in battle. Crafting entails to hunting different animals scattered around the world, and using their pelts to create upgrades for HP, pistol count, ammo pockets, etc, etc. On the other hand, you can purchase cosmetic upgrades, different outfits as well as cutlasses and guns. I say cosmetic and I mean it. Black Flag's first and most prevalent problem is that it throws around a lot of subsystems that more often than not don't work. Unlike previous games, different swords offer extremely negligible differences in attack power, so there's no use in deviating from the starter set. Moreover, you can use Uplay to instantly acquire the Blades of Toledo, a pair of endgame swords that make the weapon merchant obsolete. Guns are different, since your starting set can't kill weak enemies with a single shot, so you'll have to upgrade from your starting ones. And honestly, there's no reason to spend any coin on weapons because the majority of your wealth will go to, drumroll please, your ship. By far the most defining aspect of the game, the ship feels like it's the center of gameplay a lot of times. Like every time an idea was presented in a meeting, everyone had to brainstorm how it would work with the ship in mind. Black Flag's map is a condensed version of the Caribbean Sea. You can only explore 3 big cities, Kingston, Nassau and Havana. That means a lot of the side content as well as specific parts of the story are found out in the open sea or in one of the many small islands, and the way to access that content is via the ship. The naval battles are incredibly fun throughout the entire game. The Jackdaw, the ship that Edward acquires, starts out as a basic frigate but slowly gets upgraded and outfitted with new weapons, concluding in an all-powerful one-ship fleet that can take down any threat in the sea. Engaging in combat against enemy crews will have you using most, if not all of your arsenal in every encounter. There are chain shots used to pursue enemy ships while fleeing. Not very damaging, but can be used to chip away at a ship's health as you hunt them down. Alternatively, you can defend yourself from pursuers by using fire barrels. They act as mines once deployed and can deal serious damage to ships unfortunate or unattentive enough to sail right through them. By far the best way to initiate combat is by firing mortar shots. This type of artillery is extremely powerful, but it takes a while to reload and to hit the target after you've fired, meaning unless you're shooting at a stationary target, you'll have to aim along the path you expect the enemy to take, which doesn't always end favorably for you. In closer range, you'll obviously use cannons. Normal shots can be aimed to arc around the sails or directly at the hull, depending on what part of the ship you'll want to damage. Heavy shots can't be aimed and have incredibly short reach, but they're infinitely stronger. Dealing enough damage at a ship's hull will expose its weak points, which you can take advantage of using the swivel gun. You can also ram enemy ships as an opening or finishing move. Once you incapacitate a ship, you can either sink it and get a fraction of the original rewards or board it. First of all, do it for the boarding music. This game's soundtrack is so fucking good. Boarding a ship offers you a very different playing field than normal combat. Depending on the size of the ship boarded, you might need to complete other tasks besides incapacitating a certain number of enemies to capture it, be that destroying the ship's gunpowder reserves or taking out the snipers. These micro-objectives keep the boarding sequences from ever becoming too stale. Once again, there isn't a staggering amount of depth. The fun comes from the freedom to approach combat once equipped with a multitude of tools and the aesthetics, obviously. You can stay in your ship and gun down enemies or get right into the action, maybe a mix of both. Swinging right into an aerial kill feels oh so satisfying, no matter how many times you do it. Once incapacitated, you can use the ship to repair your own, lower your wanted level, which we'll talk about later, or send it to Kenway's fleet. The fleet is another little touch that helps put some flavor in the naval aspect of the game. If you enjoy the micromanaging aspect of mobile games, this one's for you. You essentially send captured ships to various missions around the West Indies and beyond. These missions take a couple of hours to end and reward you with money and some trinkets here and there. It's something you can sink 10 minutes into before starting your session one day and again the next, and so on and so forth. It also gives you an extra incentive to seek out larger ships to assign them harder missions, as if gathering upgrade materials wasn't enough of an incentive. Almost all combatable ships can be sent to your rapidly growing army, all except from 4. So far we've simply scratched the surface of naval activities in the game. Seeing as the focus of the game is in the open sea instead of huge cities, there are naturally a lot of things to do. One endgame activity to work towards completing are the legendary ships. Located in the 4 corners of the map, these battles are the hardest in the game. Each ship specializes in one aspect, from long-range mortars to impenetrable armor. They are the hardest fights in the game, and they reward you with a staggering amount of cash. However, seeing as you need your ship to be close or fully upgraded, any amount of cash this late in the game amounts to nothing. Also, you can't board them, which is really disappointing. I wouldn't mind the end of those fights to be a boarding set piece. It would be a bit more scripted, yeah, sure, but a great spectacle nonetheless. Still, after creating a monster of a ship with all the endgame upgrades, it's nice to have one more challenge waiting for you. To end this section on naval combat, I'd like to appreciate some details that really tie up the whole experience for me. First, the world is dense. No matter how small it is, you'll always see some place or ship in the horizon. In addition, enemy factions will occasionally fight with each other. You can find incapacitated ships on your travels or naval battles in progress. This greatly enhances how much you feel like you're a part of the world, not the center of it. This can also happen in towns, with pirates and criminals picking fights with guards at times. When you get really close to the ship and fire your cannons directly at it, the smoke clouds the screen for a second, impeding your vision and making your reposition a bit harder. On the handful of naval trailing missions, Edward whispers his commands to the crew instead of shouting them at the top of his lungs. Small things like this, along with the crew's dialogue, really help the entire naval part of the game be more fun for me. But don't think we're done quite yet. Greetings, visitors. Welcome to the marvelous West Indies. I am Estilexus, and I'll be your travel guide for today. Once you get over the crippling fear of death accompanying your venture with our company, you'll come to appreciate such risky hobbies as harpoon hunting. With the smallest creature you can find being a bull shark, you can surely expect a real monster of a fish to show up sometime. If killing the aquatic fauna for upgrade materials isn't your thing, we can always sell their hides on the gift shop. If horror is more up your alley, then you can try using the diving bell. where you'll be thrust in the depths of the sea to scavenge treasure and upgrade plans from shipwrecks. Careful not to get eaten by sharks, killed by eels, jellyfish, or drowning. Trust me, it will be all worth it for the PTSD. As somebody afraid of depths myself, swimming around an underground ravine surrounded by a school of sharks is a great pastime. It's a great pastime. It's a great pastime. Are you more the homicidal, unhinged type? Worry not, for you can take advantage of hundreds of cannon fodder soldiers patrolling plantations and smuggler dens to satisfy your primal urges. Oh, and don't forget to actually loot the plantation. Isn't that what it's all about? Or you could, just visit all the different islands available. In truth, it all sounds very overwhelming to take on at once. There is something that functions as a sort of to-do list, featuring my favorite naval activity of them all, the forts. Forts in AC4 take on the role of viewpoint for your naval shenanigans, on top of being the best naval activity. That's right, suck my fat harpoon, you leathery-skinned goldfish. While confronting these forts, you must first incapacitate their defenses using your ship. After that, similarly to how you board the ship, you deck and infiltrate the fort on foot. The objective is to kill the high-ranking officers, infiltrate their treasury, and take the place for yourself. Now, I don't know how such a small army of sailors is already fighting the soldiers, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and say that they were prisoners. Now, apart from being a sick set piece, the forts offer a couple of benefits when captured. For one, most restricted areas in that section of the map are liberated, meaning ships won't attack you on sight. In addition, all important places in that section will be revealed on the map, showing you where a shipwreck is located or what kind of activities could be completed at any specific island. Also, as an added detail, a conquered fort will attack enemy ships and sink them. I seldom found it useful, but any details like that are greatly appreciated. All this side content is very fun to complete and proves extremely helpful in gameplay and narrative. In gameplay because more cash is essential in upgrading your ship, and in narrative because the story takes place over the course of several years. So having some side content to do in between two important story events helps sell the believability of time progressing significantly. Plus, at the early chapters of the story, Edward has no motivation other than becoming rich, with the observatory being more of a background element than anything. Therefore, you can argue that all this side content in itself doesn't contradict the protagonist's own desires, easing the ludonarrative dissonance. Speaking of which, let's get back into the narrative, shall we? Last time we saw a ragtag band of bandits. They were headed to the Confederate of Nassau, an independent state of sorts founded by pirates and the like. It is here we meet three quite important supporting characters: Ben Hornigold, James Kidd, and the legend himself, Edward Teats.
Head Thatch.
Oh, okay, Thatch.
Jackdaw. You named your brig after a poxy bird.
For anyone aware of their history, it's a pretty spot-on interpretation. While we've never given some sort of tragic backstory for any of them, they play fairly major roles in the story. And so, as we see them in more and more cutscenes, their charm manages to shine. The objective of this part of the story is to teach Edward and the player the basics of naval combat and plundering, the bread and butter of any pirate, and the main way you'll be reaching your goal of fully upgrading your ship.
You let him carry a pistol, do you?
Peace, Ben.
Did Ubisoft predict racism? This whole section serves to establish Edward's ambition as a core element to his character. When faced with a score that most would consider more than a fair day's pay, he ignores it and sets his sights on a prize that would set him up for life. While his ambition is what drives him to move the plot forward, it's also the source of his worst mistakes. More on that later.
Sure, but it's only a dream.
Every man hopes to find a dozen chests of gold with no owners. They're as rare as an honest king.
There's more than a dozen chests like that right here in Nassau. What the fuck are you on about, mate? After Edward spends some time familiarizing himself with the life of a pirate, the first big problem for Nassau emerges. Although there is a growing number of people allying themselves with the place, the cove still lacks sturdy defenses. Of course, Edward proposes finding the observatory, but is quickly shut down. Advising on a more practical solution, Thats tells everyone about a galleon he's been tracking. A slow man-o-war with astounding firepower, captained by none other than Julien Ducasse. By mere chance, he becomes our first target. Edward storms the jungle and stealths his way to the ship in one of the most memorable early missions. While it could be considered a boss fight, such events in Assassin's Creed have always been more of a story set piece. It's a boss when it comes to the story, but not when it comes to gameplay, if that makes sense.
Remember the gift you gave me? Well, it answers just fine.
Fils de putain! As bold as a musket ball, and still half as sharp. Ah!
I'm sorry about this, mate, but I can't risk you telling your Templar friends about me still kicking around.
I pity you, Boucanier. After all you have seen, after all we showed you of our order, still you embrace the life of an ignorant and aimless rogue.
What's this?
Is petty larceny the extent of your ambition? Have you no mind to comprehend the scope of ours? All the empires on Earth abolished, a free and open world, without parasites like you. Que l'enfer que tu trouveras soit le fruit de ton insouciance.
Brief IRL intervention. The plot thickens when we're asked by the IT guy to make a delivery to two assassins from previous games. The IT guy makes himself incredibly suspicious since he gives you basic clearance for locked doors and secret files. Your boss urges you to focus on finding the observatory first and foremost. Oh, and Desmond's generous donation is there too, I guess.
Obviously, we need to scrub off some of the dirt to make it family-friendly.
I love how we've been doing nothing but kill and plunder, and our boss has the nerve to drop the phrase family-friendly in there. Oh well, back to the Animus.
Oi! Where you going, the market?
No, My parents have asked me to come live with them, and I'd like to.
Oh, what do you mean, live with them? You live here with me.
I'm sorry, Edward, but my father is right. You had a decent wage when you worked the farm. Why can you not be satisfied with that? With me?
Decent wage? That job was near as damn it to robbery. You want to be married to a peasant the whole of your life?
All right, Edward. All right.
You leave now, Caroline. You'll never know what's coming to us. Caroline! Caroline!
Pondering the past, Edward is woken up by Kid, who shows him an Aztec puzzle leading to treasure that will be showcased later. He urges him to inspect the inside of the mansion. In it we find two things: a Templar armor set, a reward for completing a chain of side quests, and the next immediate hook on the story.
Hang me, that's the map I sold to Governor Torres in Havana. He said it marked the location of assassin encampments.
You think maybe you owe them a bit of warning, then? If you have any kind of heart beating in that chest.
Suppose I could, if it leads me to the 4 other keys.
Bad excuse is better than none at all.
In my opinion, it's a great choice not to introduce the assassins as a main entity in the story right away. From the first couple of hours, the force of the assassin is nothing more than background, serving little to no purpose in the protagonist's motivation. It lets us get familiar with the kind of person Edward is by giving him freedom to focus on his goals, without any higher calling. This causes a disparity between him and other assassins, making us wonder how he'll end up joining forces. Egotistical and greedy as he is, he follows Kid's invitation to the coast of Yucatan. Not so much out of the kindness of his heart, but following the lead of the prize. The Templar armor, the Mayan trinkets, and the observatory lure him to follow the righteous path of warning the assassins. At this particular moment in the story, he could be considered an anti-hero. Let's get philosophical for a second. What is kindness? What are morals? According to Aristotle, in the book Nicomachean Edits, true kindness comes from habit. To grossly oversimplify his words, doing something good because of the potential reward it may bring doesn't make you a truly good person. Instead, doing the right thing because it's simply the right thing and making that a habit is the way to be a good person and a factor to attaining happiness, according to him. That is to say, Edward really doesn't look like a good guy right now. If he wasn't our charming protagonist, he'd be a pretty scummy and opportunistic anti-hero, which he is. Now he's a scummy and opportunistic anti-hero with the charm needed to be a protagonist. After a couple of weeks, Edward heads to the designated meeting spot, knocking the assassins in his way unconscious. I mean, he isn't killing them, at least. Ahtabai, the master assassin of the region, is the first person to do more than passively remark Edward's reckless actions. He's clearly not welcome here, but him having seen the Sage is the only reason he's allowed to remain on the hideout. Kid leads him underground, explaining the creed of the League along the way. It's immediately apparent that Edward is thinking of this philosophy as an excuse to be exempt from consequences, a very immature and incomplete understanding of the concept. After solving a puzzle, a very forgettable puzzle and very easy puzzle at that, the pair finds the statue of the Sage face, a statue that's been locked up for thousands of years but is somehow a spitting likeness of his face. Reporting back to Ahtabai, he recognizes that a new Sage has appeared, but before asking about the sweet lore, they're faced with the immediate problem of the Templar invasion, thanks to the maps Edward sold them. The first step to correcting his error is driving the Templars away and freeing the prisoners. Some of Edward's crew is also mixed in there, so he really has no choice. It's in this part you're given the blow dart, your ranged stealth weapon. I really enjoy this mission. It forces you to be stealthy, gives you a weapon that emphasizes that, and there are plenty of trees and columns you can use to move from vantage point to vantage point. Snipers are still your biggest threat, as alerting them can lead to prisoners getting killed without you having the opportunity to do something. That's where the darts come in. They have plenty of range. The effect's duration is enough to allow you to incapacitate them, and no one is alerted. You really need to be aware of your surroundings to succeed here. After helping free the prisoners, Edward is absolved of his errors but remains an outsider to the assassins. He's offered a reward if he completes assassination contracts, and promptly returns to Nassau. Fast forward him reading a letter, presumably from his wife or loved one, or writing one to her. Charles Vane and Jack Rackham are introduced, having just arrived to the town. Intel from Blackbeard suggests that Torres is holed up in a fortress, and finally we get to my favorite naval activity. Have I mentioned how much I enjoy Ada and Edward's chemistry together?
So, what'll you do with your share of the gold we take from Governor Torres? Return to Africa, prince among men?
I cannot return to a place I've never been. I was born in Trinidad, a slave from my first breath.
Ah. But wouldn't you feel, I don't know, more welcome there?
As you might feel more welcome in Paris.
Fair point.
With this skin and this voice, where can I go in the world and feel at ease? This country here is my best chance. This country called Jackdaw, where I know the names of all citizens and they know mine, and we work together. Not always out of love, but to keep our country afloat.
I understand you. Let's take her then. For the citizens of Jackdaw!
Refer a couple of minutes back to me phoning how much of a great addition to the game are the naval forts. Torres is apparently still hunting for the Sage, and once cornered, spills the tea about the slaver, Lawrence Prince, in Kingston, holding the Sage and being willing to sell him off.
Well, hello, Your Excellency. I'd got word you might be here.
I know your face, pirate, but your name was borrowed the last time we spoke.
Ah, yes, I recall. Mr. Duncan Walpole. I missed that one. So, what's a Templar Grand Master doing so far from his Castillo?
I'd rather not say.
And I'd rather not cut your lips off and feed him to you.
2 years ago, we offered a reward for the sage's recapture. Today, someone claims to have found him. This gold is his ransom.
Who found him?
A slaver by the name of Lawrence Prince. He lives in Kingston.
We like this story, Torres. And we want to help you finish it. But we're going to do it our way. Using you and your gold.
Edward decides to tag along, threatening Torres, and they decide to meet in Kingston to tail Torres and Prince and find the Sage. Now, this is a very important point in the story. The protagonist has the upper hand and everything is going according to plan. It is of utmost importance to get to Kingston as fast as possible and watch the trade unfold. So this is where I took about a week's time to complete every naval fort, harpooning activity and side quest I could. Prime example of breaking the continuity in open world games, but at least the side objectives are fun enough. The side quests for the Templar keys are a nice chain of bite-sized normal missions and don't overstay their welcome. The side characters introduced aren't anything of note, but their designs are interesting and there comes a point where they aid you back when you need it. Its quest chain doesn't take more than 30 minutes, so it's the epitome of short and sweet. Right, back to Kingston. Ada expresses his disdain for Edward's plan. Along with the crews, naturally a slave from birth wouldn't be too keen on a man he considers a good friend to be making deals with slavers. Alas, the conversation is cut short by the appearance of James Kidd. After a very interesting conversation between Torres and Prince, they almost agree to the trade, but Prince calls it off, having discovered the pair of assassins following them, and so both targets flee. This mission clearly shows how a very tangible rift is beginning to form between Edward and his allies. His own schemes bring him at odds with both his trusted friends and the League of Assassins, foreshadowing the consequences of his actions. Good storytelling. The next mission revolves around Prince's assassination. While he isn't part of the overarching plot and only appears briefly, Edward's relationships with everyone close to him are affected a lot by his existence. So, what's the hook for this mission?
Ready?
Your name's not James, is it?
Not most days. Come on.
Damn, man. How is it you're a woman?
Christ, Edward. Is that something that needs explaining?
Jesus Christ, Edward. It's current year. Come on, hold your tongue. Kid, now revealing herself to Edward, gets us into the mansion, using her acting skills to trick the guards. Acting skills are almost as poignant and powerful as my narrating skills.
Stand your ground!
Please, I've been shot. I need aid.
Christ, Thompson, look at her. She's hurt.
Dreadfully, sir. I'm poorly.
All right,
I'm faint.
take an arm, lass.
Bless you, lads.
Locating and killing our dear Boomer makes Roberts reveal himself to him. He doesn't seem too distraught about Prince's apparent betrayal and once again makes things harder for Edward.
Why hang over me like a leering crow? To see an old man suffer?
You've caused no small portion of suffering yourself, Mr. Prince. Retribution, I suppose.
You absurd cutthroats and your precious philosophy. You live in the world, but you cannot make it move.
You mistake my motive, old man. I'm only after a bit of coin.
As was I, lad. As was I.
Heads up, Kenway! I found your man!
I remember you. The Templar from Havana.
I'm no Templar, mate. That was just a ruse. We've come here to save your ass from this slaver.
Save me? I work for Mr. Prince.
Well, then he's a poor man to call master. He meant to sell you out to the Templars.
Oh, you can't trust anyone, it seems.
Roberts!
Escaping the estate, the assassin reveals her name to be Mary Reed and promises to team up with Edward to find the Sage.
But not a word of it to anyone. Or I'll unman you as well.
The entire franchise was this close to never happening. Back at Nassau, Kenway and the rest of the founders of the Republic are faced with a perilous crisis. On one hand, the place is a breeding ground for diseases due to poor hygiene and lack of doctors and medicine. I really enjoy how it's immediately apparent to the player even before it's explicitly stated by the characters. Rats running around in every corner, citizens of the place slumped over, vomiting and suffering, and a more foggy and monochrome color palette are nice details that I feel weird for not expecting to see, but they're welcome nonetheless. The other pressing matter is an apparent pardon by the king, issued to anyone who wants it. This simple premise puts a rift between the characters. Hornigold, being the more logical and calculating of the bunch, is seriously considering taking the pardon, seeing as Nassau is all but a lost cause. If it keeps heading the way it's been heading for a while now. Blackbeard, on the other hand, chooses the more poetic and ideologically driven approach, clinging on the idea of a land for free men, no matter its state. Edward acts as the middle ground and tries to appeal at both sides. I find it interesting how Edward's relationship with his crew starts to fall apart around the same time as his friends. The plan these vagabonds came up with is to hunt for medicine in a way that won't attract the British fleet. The first attempt doesn't go well. Edward dives underwater to salvage a shipwreck with medicine, but after all that, the medicine is apparently spoiled. They decide to try another solution, but not before this great moment.
Will we steal medicines now?
Remember the pardon, Thatch. We're to be subtle.
Says Ornigold, a pirate, now too proud to call himself one.
He prefers caution to cannons.
Caution's nothing without charisma. Or if a man plays the fool, then it's only fools he'll persuade, but appear to be the devil. And all men will submit.
And would you be the devil?
big show. Give your quarry something to fear. Some hellish thing from a fevered dream. And men will drop to their knees, pleading for their lord before all else.
Oh god.
Looks fine.
Of course it does.
I love how this little moment gives the character of Blackbeard enough depth to be more interesting. He's not a mindless cur, slaughtering and terrifying others just because. He understands what kind of presentation he needs to adapt to be feared and respected amidst a superstitious populace. I already mentioned the thalassophobia-inducing diving bell segment, so I'll spare you the terror.
What the hell's happened here? Were you attacked?
Other way round. It were Blackbeard who struck first. Opened fire on a British man-o'-war, the pillock.
What in God's name for?
Still searching for medicines, but he's gone barmy if you ask me.
I'll bring him home.
Leave him, man. He's heaped this trouble on himself.
Blast. This is getting well out of hand.
A dozen crates of medicine should not be so hard to come by.
That ain't my meaning. It's Thatch and Hornigold in this pointless feud of theirs. How'd you feel it?
I do, aye. But both men have their hearts in a good place. Both want the best for the people of Nassau.
But is that the best course for us? Saving a city that ain't worth much. We're not men made to govern. We take and spend and live heartily wherever we go.
What solution would you propose?
The answer's in wealth and power, not politics. If we found the observatory, we'd see enough money to buy the whole of England. Or it might be we lord over these kings and emperors like they was peasants themselves.
A lot of large talk, Captain. But is it your crew you sail for, or yourself?
I mean the best for these men, Ade, I do. But this don't sit right. I feel like I'm running errands, not living my life.
I'm not a man accustomed to murder, Captain. If you'd taken quarter, you'd not be seeping now.
Sack a muzzle, gobshite. You'll be hanged and sun-dried just as them there were in Boston.
The King's called for a pardon.
Captain, we've searched the hold. It's a middling take. But the medicine we found bears a Charlestown stamp.
Thank you, Mr. Hans.
We cannot resupply Nassau out here by force and accident alone. We should go to Charlestown for the lot.
Hello? Are we victorious? I fear I am not built for the fatigue and care required to live as a man of fortune.
Meet me in Charlestown. 1 month from today.
A couple of days later we find Thad's laying siege to Charlestown, having taken prisoners and demanding medicine in return. Edward offers to solve the problem for him, seeing as a week has passed and no medicine has arrived. While it's a valid criticism that ship stealth sections of the game grind the pacing to a halt, I really enjoy this set piece. It's small, secluded area made specifically for parkour and as such can incorporate very interesting camera angles.
Always another way.
All stop!
After tailing the envoys back to the base, Edward chases down the head honcho and kills him, taking a sizable haul of medicine back. Blackbeard then confesses that he is retiring out of the life of piracy, prudently thinking to make his final years comfortable, as opposed to half-heartedly captaining his ship until death.
You should quit these waters, Thatch. The governor, he's bound to muster more soldiers.
You go on ahead. I got some business in the north.
You're done, aren't you? Giving up on us? On Nassau?
Look, lad. I'm late into my 4th decade on this earth. And if I don't find some means to make the 5th a quiet and cozy voyage, I'd rather sink to the devil's doorstep than call myself captain another year. We'll meet again, lad. this world. Or the one below.
You can tell the impact that these news have on Edward, seeing as he probably thinks of Thatch as a mentor, arguably his biggest influence among his peers. This section of the game also brings forth a grievance I have with this game in general. The set pieces kinda suck. What I mean is that they look uneventful, they lack spice and eventfulness. For example, in an early part of the game you make an escape on a stolen brig. If you remember about half an hour earlier, when I mentioned it, I praised it for being very fun to play through, but that's for the first time, as it is with a lot of these open world games. Most of the times they're not made to be replayed over and over again, and this being my third time of completing the game from start to finish, these things are quite apparent. In this case in particular, very few ships actually chase you, and you don't encounter many obstacles in this section, so playing it for a second time, it just feels barren. You can imagine how it feels for a third time. And yes, I know these games aren't meant to be played twice and thrice, but I think certain moments could have benefited from relinquishing player control and adding a more cinematic air. I'm sure that's a result of Ubisoft's annual release practice, during which most Assassin's Creed games were released. Short trip back to the Great IRL. The elusive technician John blackmails our up-and-coming employee to hack info out of the CEO's computer, where we find emails detailing possible locations for the next Assassin's Creed game. Hey, remember when everyone freaked out over this back in 2013? We deliver it and back to our job we go. Edward...
I've an awful feeling about this. You'll be hurt out there. I couldn't handle that.
I'll be careful, I promise. And when I'm flush with coin and set up, I'll send for you. I will.
Caroline, come away! Don't exert yourself!
I can't promise I'll come, Edward. If you leave on this fool's errand, I cannot promise anything.
Don't give up on me, Caroline. Not when I need your faith the most.
Edward finds himself in Nassau, where more trouble is brewing. The British have taken the offensive, offering a pardon to any pirate that wants it, further raising the tension between the leading men in Nassau. Vane and Rackham clearly oppose the plan. Edward suggests they seek refuge in his hideout, and they both hatch a plan to escape. They blow up the British blockade and assassinate the Commodore, just before he orders the ships to be sunk. Some months later, Kid comes to visit, trying to bring Edward back to reality. After the fall of Nassau, Blackbeard retired, and Edward is off to find him. Remember what I said 2 minutes ago about the set pieces of the game lacking eventfulness? This is one of the asterisks to that comment, because the next section of the game is honestly amazing.
Ahoy, kid. You missed quite a time.
Aye. Pity about Nassau, and Blackbeard flying the coop.
Well, we'll see about Thatch. Vane's off to see him now, and I'm following soon.
This is what's left of your experiment in democracy.
Aye. We do as we please here, and we take our time doing it.
But for Christ's sake, Edward, don't anything but the stink of riches wrinkle your nose.
What's got into you, man?
Reality, mate. Reality. See that you ain't pulled into the drink by this drowning rat.
Oi! I've lived longer than most men who trod this path.
a great disappointment you are, Thatch. His mind's made up to stay, he says. So sod him. And hang all of you lot that follow this sorry bastard into obscurity.
I know you're come to call me home, Kenway. Your faith in me is kind. But with Nassau done in, I feel I'm finished.
I'm not of the same mind, mate. But I won't begrudge you the state of yours.
You still looking for that sage fellow?
Aye.
Taking a prize a month back, I heard a man named Roberts was working a slave ship called the Princess. Might want to see about it.
The Princess. Cheers, Thatch.
Oh, don't sit there like a barrel of wet fish. We're celebrating my retirement! Uncork this man's breakfast!
Save us a few bottles, eh?
Setting course for north, Edward finds Thoughts refusing to return. Even though he doesn't agree, he says he'll not begrudge Blackbeard's choice to retire. Before he can join him for a drink though, he spots someone suspiciously running away from the both of them. Tailing him, he finds out he's an undercover British Marine. The sailor sends a signal and mortar shots immediately rain down on the small town, completely destroying it. After a sick parkour section, Edward and his crew along with Blackbeard set out to sink the man-o-war leading the blockade. Even though the fight seems to be going well, Thoughts, overwhelmed and exhausted, is ultimately killed, and Edward, thrown overboard, makes a hasty escape back to safe waters.
In a world without gold, we might have been heroes!
Devil curse me. Where's the jackdaw?
What of Thatch, sir? Did he fall? Captain?
He drinks damnation.
Soon after, Edward and Vane are mourning Blackbeard when Vane starts to express interest in the observatory. Thoughts clued Kenway in regarding a ship called the Princess, which is being captained by the sage himself. They set off to find it, but after questioning a ship working for the same company, Jack Rackham, of all people, double-crosses Vane and throws him and Edward on a destroyed ship.
I'll gut you, Jack Rackham! I'll open you up, I'll tear out your organs, and string a bloody loot with them!
Stop your goddamn howling, Vane! There's no bloody use!
Well, well, the fearsome Edward Kenway speaks, eh? Pray tell us, Captain, how to quit this predicament. And tell us what genius you have for sailing a boat with no sails and no rudder.
Shut your gob!
This part of the game serves as a test of faith to Edward, seeing as both sources of concern for him, Rackham and Vane, were the ones he sided with in the Nassau situation. Vane, being somehow more hot-headed, arrogant and selfish than Edward, does nothing but make his life harder. Stranded on an island, Vane, like that one cunt that just adds their name on a group project without having done any work, leeches off the food and water Edward procures. After a chase in the jungle, their confrontation ends with this great moment.
You goddamn fucking knave, Vane!
Nancy boy, you only done half a fucking job.
Fucking hell. Is this my reward for believing the best about men? For thinking that a bilge rat like you could muster up some fucking sense once in a while? Maybe Hornigold was right. Maybe the world does need men of ambition to stop the likes of you from mucking it all up.
Or maybe you just don't have the stones to live with no regrets.
Don't save me a spot in hell, Shanker. I ain't coming soon.
Edward leaves Vane be and hijacks a fishing boat. Sometime later he is being reunited with Kid and Ade, who managed to get the Jackdaw back after Rackham crawled back to Nassau no more than 2 weeks after the event. Once again, Edward refuses to join the assassins in their search for the Sage. Back at Kingston, Edward is told the Templars are here, hot on the tail of the Sage. Adewale once again expresses his fatigue for the whole ordeal, emphasizing the crew agrees. Ignoring him, Edward eavesdrops on Torres, Hornigold and Rogers, learning the Sage's location in the process. I have to say, I really enjoy eavesdropping sections. I feel like they usually get a bad rep for being tedious or boring. While that may be true, it gives villains who don't interact a lot with the protagonist a chance to explain their worldview and see them interact with all manner of different characters. Oh, and jumping from rooftop to rooftop, silently following your target, that's one of the coolest aspects of the series. In this sequence in particular, I like how the Grandmaster's thoughts are laid out, defining his modus operandi quite clearly. Discovered by Hornigold, Edward flees, but not before learning of the Sage's location. Africa. Specifically Principe. Reaching the island, Edward encounters Roberts holding him at gunpoint once more. His captain was killed in an ambush. He's planning to make an escape, but Edward goes to free him and his men and kill the newly appointed Templar officers from Nassau so as to not leak the news of Roberts' escape. I never paid any attention to it. I thought these two guys were just random Templars, but they are actually seen in the cutscenes in the Nassau situation, when the debate gets more heated right after the pardon is introduced.
You done us good, Kenway. Proved yourself a true bravo. And for what?
His own bloody pride.
You stepped in the path of my prize. Not a thing a man should do.
A cocksure, Cully. Just like Hornigold said.
That Templar scab means nothing to me. None of you do.
And you're worse for it, Kenway. It were the Templars who took us in when all else went to shit. Not our king. Not our country. The Templars.
The Templars is our family. Where's yours?
Free from immediate danger, Robert declares himself as captain of the crew and, recognizing Edward, promises to share with him the secrets of the observatory. Sometime later, Roberts, while discussing with Edward, instructs him to sail to certain coordinates. This mission as well is very fun. To acquire a certain treasure related to the observatory, Roberts has taken a Portuguese captain hostage. Edward must stealthily steal a flag to safely pass in between enemy lines. You threw it in the wrong way, idiot. Then he proceeds on foot to clear out scouts and lookouts under the cover of the mist. Once you take control of the man-o-war, you actually get to pit it against a small fleet of enemies. Controlling this massive overpowered ship for a short amount of time is extremely satisfying. The treasure is revealed to be the glass vials containing the blood of the Templars, which were mentioned to be in transit to a safe house in Rio de Janeiro. Edward pressures Roberts and earns himself a look at the observatory. As luck would have it, Edward's final obstacle is his old friend, Hornigold. After finding his ship, incapacitating it and forcing him and his soldiers to go on land, Edward manages to kill Hornigold and lashes out in rage.
Ah! You could have been a man who stood for something. But you've a killer's heart now. With nothing but metal to show for all your blunders.
Damn sight better than you, Ben. The heart of a traitor who thinks himself better than his mates.
Aye, and proven true. What have you done since Nassau fell, huh? Nothing but murder and mayhem.
You threw in with the very kind we once hated!
No! These Templars are different. I wish you could see that. But if you continue on your present course, you'll find you're the only one walking it. With the gallows at its end.
It may be. But now the world has one less snake in it. And that's enough for me.
Having refused to aid the assassins in protecting the observatory, he meets Roberts ashore. The mysterious man informs Edward of his peculiar memories, which enable him to know about the observatory and its secrets. Memories from a past life. Edward engages in a stealth showdown with the island's natives. Their blow darts do a ton of damage, so he must sneak around them and ambush them from behind. Finally reaching the observatory, the imagery of the smooth and angular exterior of the place taken over by nature really emphasizes how bizarre it is to finally be here. Like any good supporting character and not at all a villain, Roberts shoots all 4 of his followers, claiming they wouldn't be able to handle the secrets. What sort of otherworldly sights are hidden inside? Bayonetta 3? Obama's last name? An Evangelion 3.1 screening near your area? Along with the protagonist, we've earned ourselves a look-see, and so we enter.
I must say I'm quite taken by this new vocation of mine. And it may amuse you to know that I have authored my own articles of conduct.
Creed of your own, eh? Sensible.
And punishable by death if disobeyed.
Oh hey look, Twitter has a cameo. The aesthetic and visual design of the observatory itself is really unique and memorable. That goes for all the artifacts in the series. No matter where you place it, in the past or in a modern setting, the sharp angles, twilight colors, and bizarre mechanisms look out of place. It's a great way to set it up as something foreign without even listening to the legends. And since you don't spend a lot of time in it, it makes even more apparent that no one is welcome here. Reaching the core of the observatory, Edward witnesses firsthand its power by spying on Rackham and Governor Torres. This is the peak of Edward's ambition. A while ago, Torres' schemes seems like a threat, but now, spying on him like that, Edward has been elevated way above everyone else that might have posed a threat to him. In this short section, all the sacrifices, all the struggle, the barriers he's created between him and his most trusted friends, they're all validated. And of course, after the rise comes the fall.
We'll be masters of the ocean with that.
Oh, such ambition.
There is nothing in my code about loyalty, boy. You played your role, but our partnership is done.
You're a dead man, Roberts!
Escaping the observatory, Edward gets skewered in the gut and slowly limps towards Roberts, unable to even attack. Now, I do find it a bit hard to believe that he can get axed in the face and fall to the ground and live, but a relatively small stick does him in, but hey, it's scripted. The Jackdaw has sailed away, with the captain finally having lost the trust of his crew, and Roberts sends him to a Jamaican prison. The prison is located in Kingston, and Roberts collects the prize on Edward's head. Now starts the absolute rock bottom for Edward's character. Now for a quick jump to the present for a sequel hook. So our character finally makes it to the central sewer of the facility and unlocks the trailer for the game Abstergo will make using Edward's memories. It's very weird to watch it in current year. The over-dramatic narration and the complete disregard for any character shown make the trailer comedic. At least it did in 2013. Now it feels like it belongs in a Things That Didn't Age Well compilation. But that's the thing, it's supposed to be perversely oversimplified, and it is only because you as a player have personally interacted with the characters of the story. Had that experience not been a thing, the trailer would have been fine. On its own, it's a funny meta-commentary on industry marketing, maybe a small jab at the bland video game trailers. In universe, I think it's supposed to make you dislike Abstergo more by showing you how they're bending the characters to fit their marketing. After that, Juno shows up. She mentions the time is not yet right and fucks off, leaving John perplexed and mad. After that quick pit stop, we find Edward in the court of a prison in Kingston, escorted by guards to be judged. There he meets Anne Bonny and Mary Read, captured and sentenced to death. Turns out they're both pregnant, so they're spared for a few more months. Edward refuses to confess the location of the observatory to the Templars, and so he's thrown in prison. The next mission is the most important one for Edward's character arc. He starts suspended in a cage, rotting away and mocked by guards who don't even know the name of their prisoner, confusing him for Duncan Walpole, the assassin we killed at the beginning of the game. Achtabai saves him and asks to help with freeing Mary and Anne. The objective of his mission is to reach the location of the women and safely escort them out. However, what makes this mission one of the best is it offers closure to every character left in Edward's life. He's even considered a friend. Steed Bonnet was hung a while ago. You can find Rackham's dried up corpse stuck in a cage, same as you. Entering the prison, Vane's maddened singing echoes around the halls. Edward offers some words to it, as if it was a funeral. Especially now, Matt Ryan, the actor for Edward, delivers the melancholic emotions he's feeling perfectly, once again showing that Edward is much more nuanced as a character. Finding the two women offers a frightening sight. Anne is about to go into labor, and Mary's child was taken not too long ago, leaving her in a sickened state. Edward tries to carry her out but fails, and Mary offers some final words to motivate him before her somber passing.
Don't die on my account. Go.
This is such a pain in the ass. Damn it. You should have been the one to outlast me.
I've done my part. Will you?
If you came with me, I could. Mary.
I'll be with you, can we? I will.
Achtabai takes both women and gives Edward his usual attire, leaving him be. Drunk and broken, we finally get a peek into Edward's head, after only seeing his outside demeanor for the entire game. This sequence begins in a pub, with Edward ordering another bottle of rum, probably what he was doing before this moment. Suddenly visions of Roberts start to haunt him, teasing how little he has achieved in all the years he's been pirating compared to him. He attributes this to Edward being a good man, a line that always confused me. Edward he really isn't a good man. He's a selfish, arrogant asshole, which ends up being his downfall. One explanation is that, compared to Roberts, all his actions seem harmless, so the word good is used more like a demeaning characteristic or an insult. Another is that since he's hallucinating, he's trying to find an excuse for his failure, one that doesn't paint him in a bad light. Next, Edward is shown all his dead friends inviting him to join them in celebration. However, he rejects all of them, instead crawling towards Roberts. Next is a really good scene. It shows Edward swimming upwards amidst a school of sharks and corpses. Above water, it seems there is a naval battle in progress, possibly a nod to how the game started. The camera pans down to show just how many bodies are floating, showing all the people Edward has killed throughout the course of the game. The scene changes, and he resurfaces in a location that looks like Havana. We're presenting with a haunting sight of all of Edward's friends hung, the assassins tortured, and the Templars preaching in the middle. The nearby citizens point at him whenever he kills someone, showing how guilty he feels. I feel like the myth being narrated is meant to show how, no matter how much Edward struggles, at his current path he could never hope to be as great as an eagle. That eagle being either the assassins or all of his mentors in Nassau. The final cutscene is both Caroline and Mary berating Edward, calling out his selfishness and hypocrisy. The voice actors do an especially good job here.
No more than 2 years! You promised me!
You left! When I needed you the most!
But you had me! What keeps you wondering? Do I not make you happy?
I'm so close, Caroline! Please! Just let me do this!
It's everything you do out of spite, Edward!
It's not spite that's driving me, Mary! It's courage!
Courage for what, man? There's no one left in your life to care!
God damn you all! I can handle this!
Loud! Always tearing down when you could be building things up, or building yourself up if nothing else!
Just leave me be!
Change course, Edward! Change your bloody course before it's too late!
Since all of this is happening in his head, you can assume these are the actual regrets he has, leaving a loving wife to chase his ambitions, which led him to years of mindless pillaging. He didn't take part in the negotiations of Nassau, he didn't join the Templars, he didn't join the assassins, and his little island hideout didn't amount to anything. He never followed any of the paths available to him, choosing instead to side with his ambition, and in the process losing all his friends, his crew, and all he has to show for it is a faint memory of the observatory and nothing else. Mary directly confronts his actions and urges him to change his course before he too finds an unfortunate end. Now yes, the metaphors are very on the nose, but I don't think it's a problem. What it lacks in subtlety, it more than makes up for in execution, the voice acting especially being amazing at enhancing all these scenes. Edward is woken up by Ade, who came to bring him the jackdaw. Instantly bearing hard feelings, Edward is fully prepared to sail once more, but Ade refuses, saying he'll be joining the assassins. Even though he's not the main focus, you can see how well defined the character Ade is. So much so that they made an entire DLC for him, which I haven't played. Urged to join them, Edward decides to visit the assassins once more, now a changed man, ready to start making amends for his mistakes. Reaching the assassin hideout, we find it under attack, and we're tasked with helping them fend off the Templars. Nice one, mate. After that, we are treated to a slow and somber scene between Anne and Edward. It's a treat to see such a heartfelt conversation between pretty much the last two characters remaining. I didn't expect its emotional impact to have been effective, but alas, it tugged on my heartstrings. Edward, now with Anne as his quartermaster, leaves Tulum on good terms with Ahtabai, vowing to right his wrongs and kill his targets. This last part of the game is a payoff to Edward's journey towards becoming a proper assassin. After acting like a selfish jerk the entire game, he's slowly progressed towards this point and has earned himself the right to don the hood of the assassins. He first heads to Nassau, where he assassinates Rogers, who clues him in on Roberts' location, Principe, once again.
He was a privateer once. How is it you lack so much respect for sailors only trying to make their way in this world?
You couldn't possibly understand my motives, cretin! You have spent a whole lifetime dismantling everything that makes our civilization shine.
But I do understand. I've seen the observatory, and I know its power. You'd use that device to spy and blackmail and sabotage.
Yes. And yet all for a greater purpose. To ensure justice, to snuff out lies, and to seek truth.
There's no man on Earth who needs that power.
Yet you suffer the outlaw Roberts to use it.
No. I'm taking it back. And if you tell me where he is, I'll stop the man.
Here at the edge of a blade, I find a friend in you at last. Principe, you mad bastard. Our best sources say Principe.
Headed to Africa one last time, Edwards finds the Sage and pursues him in a really fun set piece. Towards the end, he finds himself between a Spanish and British fleet, all of them closing in on Roberts' location. The objective is to race towards incapacitating the ship and killing Roberts.
A merry life and a short one, as promised. How well I know myself. And what of you, Edward? Have you found the peace you seek?
I'm not aiming so high as that. For what's peace but a confusion between two wars?
Oh, you're a stoic then. But perhaps I was wrong about you. She might have had some use for you after all.
She? Of whom do you speak?
Oh, she who lies in wait, entombed. I had hoped to find her, to see her again, to open the door of the temple and hear her speak my name once more.
Talk sense, man.
Oh, I was born too soon. Like so many others before.
Where's the device, Roberts?
Destroy this body, Edward. The Templars. If they take me...
At least it would have been if I hadn't already maxed out all of my upgrades for the jackdaw. Anyway, Roberts offers Edward the skull of the observatory and asks him to destroy his body so as to not let the Templars have it. Our final target is Torres. We arrive in Havana to find the whole city under lockdown. Must be a virus going around. Edward finds Torres' right-hand man and tails him to the fort, where he kills Torres, revealed to be a stand-in, or an imposter. Thus, a boss fight ensues, or at least it would have been a boss fight if I hadn't gotten the armor that deflects pistol shots as well as the best guns in the game.
No man's immune to a pistol shot, I reckon.
If you could speak, mate, it would gladden me to hear your side. You humbled me once, and I took that hard lesson, and I bettered myself. Die, knowing that for all of our conflict, you helped make a soldier out of a scoundrel. Leave this life for a lasting peace, down among the dead.
We track down Torres in the observatory and begin the final confrontation. Traversing the once dense with inhabitants forest, we find them either killed or taken prisoner. Inside the observatory we can see the full extent of its defensive capabilities, incinerating the panicked soldiers. Torres is stranded in front of the main panel, and after climbing above him, Edward leaps and puts an end to his schemes.
Captain Kenway, ever a splinter in my side. Does this murder fulfill you?
I'm only seeing a job done, Torres. As you'd have done with me.
As we have done, I think. You have no family anymore, no friends, no future. Your losses are far greater than ours.
That may be. But killing you rights a far greater wrong than ever I did.
You honestly believe that?
You would see all of mankind corralled into a neatly furnished prison, safe and sober, yet dulled beyond reason and sapped of all spirit. So with everything I've seen and learned in these last years, I do believe it.
You wear your convictions well. They suit you.
After Bai shows up to put the device in its place, Edward receives a mysterious letter, and the scene ends as he's reading it. Real world time. Back to the real world. World. Ugh. Our minimum wage employee wakes up to face the Sage, aka John from IT, revealed to be another reincarnation of the guy. It's a nice twist, seeing as nowhere in the game is his face shown. After lamenting being born too early to meet with Juno, he lets himself get shot during our rescue. We're saved by... I forget her name, and once we come to, she rewards us with the finalized trailer of the product we've worked so hard on. It's definitely a better trailer, however, after experiencing Edward's adventures and seeing him at the finish line, having lost all of his old friends, it's hard to get behind this video's obvious reverence of the pirate lifestyle. If anything, it serves as a clear sign of character progression for both Edward and the player, seeing as we've seen the consequences that life has on people that live like this. This trailer is the final brick in the wall of the game's continued denial of romanticized pirate mythos. Any positives taken from that life are short-lived, and pirating is painted as a worse option than siding with either assassins or Templars. While Edward might have outlived his comrades, it was his lust for riches and power that resulted in their demise. By his devilish luck, he was able to find a place to belong after all other options were cut off. He says so himself.
Jesus, Ade, what the hell happened here?
You happened here, Edward. The damage you caused 6 years ago has not been undone.
I'm not an easy man to call a friend, am I? Is that why you're here?
To fight beside a man so driven by personal gain and glory is a hard thing, Edward. And I have come to feel the assassins and their creed a more honorable course. Have I been unfair?
No. For years I've been rushing around taking whatever I fancied, not giving a tinker's curse for those I hurt. And yet here I am, with riches and a reputation, feeling no wiser than when I left home. Yet when I turn around, look at the course I've run. There's not a man or woman that I love left standing beside me.
Sean and Rebecca call and basically urge you to hack around, which I didn't do out of habit, and we return to the Animus to watch the epilogue. We find ourselves in Edward's hideout, which he graciously offers to the assassins as a new base of operations. He's informed about Roger's surviving his wounds and swears to take care of it. This next sequence is the perfect note to end the story. After a brief discussion with Anne about their future, a ship arrives on the cove carrying Edward's daughter. He meets her for the first time and they return to England, leaving us with a cutscene of old Edward, Caroline and Haytham in an opera. The end. And now we can actually comment on the story. First of all, I must admit my shame. It was my intention to frame this video as a tale of a masterpiece undeserving of the title. I was prepared to unify the script under my comments of Disillusionment after playing the game half a decade later. The tale of a child with juvenile taste that, as an adult, sees this product as the shallow and shameful piece of media it was always. No, this is a dumb mindset, and I was proven wrong by my own experiences. I'd be reluctant to call the game a masterpiece, however, it is a complete product. There's proper build-up, narrative beats, and character development. The star of the show is of course Edward. He gets the spotlight almost exclusively, in that way reducing a lot of characters to a one-dimensional piece of cardboard. However, they don't need to be something more. The story of this game focuses primarily on Edward's progression, from rogue to a battle-hardened assassin. The characters only need to exist to push Edward as a character forward, to show him his ways are wrong, and to give context for his change of heart. Thus, by eliminating the depth of the supporting cast in the sacrificial altar of characters, the story succeeds in establishing Edward as a complete character with flaws and well-documented boundaries. With progression and charisma, a character that's fascinating to watch. Certainly a refreshing change from my last experience with Assassin's Creed. Sorry, the industrial air of London really isn't doing much good to my respiratory system. As a protagonist, Edward is perfect for this setting. The game tackles themes of personal ambition versus the collective benefit, as well as an accountability and change. We see and are a key player in Edward's journey from, frankly, an asshole to a well-developed and self-aware individual. However, the sacrifices he's made to present forth such changes are almost too heavy. All of his friends, his town, his wife, more or less all of his loved ones, at the end his original purpose is left unfulfilled. The notoriety and riches you've spent dozens of hours to attain are forgotten in a few months' time after he's incarcerated. It is in that prison where he meets most of his comrades one final time. It's there where he gets to suffer without dying. However, the story presents a much more hopeful approach to the bleak situation. Even when you've lost, frankly and literally anything, you can still get up and take responsibility to right your wrongs. Even when you're alone at the end of your rope and with your ambitions unfulfilled, you can still move forward, and that is what I believe to be another central theme of the game. It's a story about the dangers of chasing your ambition too far and what you can do after losing everything because of it. To try and interpret the game with all kinds of existential philosophies would dilute the experience and make for a very inconsistent script. There is no point in analyzing each line of dialogue for some hidden meaning. This is a very simple story. However, in its simplicity, it manages to achieve something a lot of AAA games would be envious of, that is, to actually be remembered like a good story. To close this video, I'd like to say I'm quite happy my cynicism was proven wrong. I don't enjoy hating things, especially things I've poured at least 100 hours into. I also don't enjoy changing a video title I've thought of, and I was lucky that Disillusionment was a central theme of the game. I mean, apparently I also don't enjoy being consistent with writing a script, since it's been 6 months since I finished the game, but hey, the world almost ended twice or thrice and university is a bitch, so yeah, cut me some slack. I could have titled the video "The best pirate game you've never played", but come on, I'm not nearly popular enough to clickbait. It feels weird not to end on philosophical rhetoric, however, it's fitting for this game. I don't call the game simple as an insult. By all means, simplicity is its greatest asset, since it's able to use it to tell quite a compelling story. It reaches the heights it sets for itself, and that's shown in the community response surrounding it, where it's heralded as the last bastion of classic Assassin's Creed games. Regardless of your preference in style, I strongly recommend this game. It's not perfection in digital form, it's not a metatextual masterpiece, it's not a deep epic spanning generations. It is, however, a solid pirate game with an intriguing story and fun gameplay that will keep you entertained for the 40 hours of content it has to offer. In the end, the answer to the questions I've posed in the beginning of the video are simple. Compared to Odyssey, Black Flag feels like a more grounded package that knows what it wants to say and constantly marches towards it, even if at the way it stomps on a lot of aspects that come off either underdeveloped or rushed. Regardless, in spite of its detriments, it manages to be an enjoyable time, a worthy addition to the Assassin's Creed franchise, and, for better or worse, the epitome of that generation's open-world AAA games. But at this point I'm repeating myself. I shall leave you to sail the seas for a while. Relax and hit the stray waves, laddies. Take care of yourselves, and of course, have yourselves a damn good one.
Of all the money that I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done, for want of a wit, to memory now I can't. So fell to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. They're sorry for my going, and all the sweets all sail! They'd wish me one more day to stay, but since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you Good night.